Kate Hooper is here, professor in the Department of Writing and Rhetoric, and she's going to talk about teaching public speaking in EDHE 105 and 305. So thanks for being with us, Kate. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. I don't know about you, but when I think about public speaking, I get two pretty distinct images in my head. And one of them is of the confident speaker standing next to or near a podium, generally with this gesture, and or a microphone reaching toward the mouth. And the other is an extreme close-up on a face with enormous eyes that are bloodshot and perspiration on the forehead and little squiggly lines indicating stress. And I think when we are considering public speaking and communication, oral communication exercises in the classroom, we need to embrace both of these images. As Patrick said, I am a lecturer in the Department of Writing and Rhetoric, and I'm here because Joanne Edwards and I wrote two little pages in that book of yours that are an addendum to the Department of Writing and Rhetoric. And those 2 pages offer tips to students on how to successfully present a presentation if you have one in your class. So that's why I'm here. And what I plan today is to answer some frequently asked questions about teaching speech and about speech in general, as well as show you where you can find some resources that we've pulled together for you. Joanne Edwards and I have pulled together for you on UN Box, and then finally just open the floor up for any extra questions that you have that I didn't think to cover. So let us start talking about why. Why might you incorporate communication or public speaking into your classroom oral communication? And what are some of the time frames that you're going to have to wrangle with in order to do that? So allowing students to speak publicly can do a lot for your classroom and for your students. First, it can demonstrate their learning. We know that if students have a lot of complex ideas running around in their head, if they can organize them, pull them together, and articulate those ideas clearly in their own words, they have reached a deeper understanding. So that's one. 2 is research. If your assignment includes research, right? They need to go out and research something, then they get to reinforce those research skills that they're getting in various classes. As far as leadership, this is an optional method for helping students practice it and demonstrating it, so they could lead a class discussion, for example. And then finally, we have creativity. For those of us who are a little bit more creative and we like to express that we've met your outcomes in a different way, this opens up a door or an opportunity for us. Next, it can cultivate community in your classroom. Anytime we communicate with someone else, we are sharing, right? We are connecting with others. So every interpersonal conversation, every small group conversation, every public speaking event becomes an opportunity to create stronger bonds within your classroom. It also cultivates empathy. If you think about it, let's say that you have one of those research presentations that you want students to give. Well, we need to be requiring them to understand their topic fully, a 360 degree, not just the point of view that they want to express. So it gives them a way to fully understand a topic from various points of view. Also, one of the core practices of public speaking is understanding your audience, right? So if we have to think of the topic not only from our point of view, but how our audience feels about it and why they may need information on this topic and whether or not they have any value issues with that topic, it allows them to practice empathy. But probably the biggest gift we can give them is that oral communication skills prepare them for getting a job later when they graduate. The National Association of Colleges and Employers, year after year after year, puts out a job outlook survey, and every single year employers have reported that they value oral communication skills from applicants, and this is what they need to hire. So we can allow them a lot of opportunities to demonstrate, and we can also allow ourselves opportunities to cultivate in our classrooms. But oral communication takes time, quite a bit of it. And so we have to think about the outcomes that we want from the assignment, as well as the amount of time that's going to eat up within the classroom. Because I know with EDHE, y'all have got 1,000 things you're covering, right? Yeah. So that's definitely a consideration. There are 3 models that are very popular for people to include oral communication exercises. This is not, you know, a finite list, but 3 that you can consider. One is back to back to back, right? So you give, let's say, a public speaking assignment. Everybody's going to stand up and speak for 3 to 5 to 7 minutes, and they're going to speak back to back to back to back. Are your classes around 20? Is that about right? Okay. So my classes are generally around 20, and if I have students doing a 7-minute assignment, I know that takes up an entire week if I'm doing back to back to back for presentations. So that gives you an idea. And then you not only have to do that, but you have to factor in orienting them to that assignment, the check-ins for the progress through that assignment. So you really do have to plan this out in advance time-wise. We also have meted assignments. So let's say that you're covering a chapter that's a unit that's going to take a month. Huh, y'all are laughing at me. What a luxury, right? A unit that takes a month. You might say, I want everyone in the class to speak on this unit. So over the course of the month, let's say you start every single class with a couple of presentations. You can also just have standing engagements throughout the year. Let people know at the beginning of the year when they'll be presenting and on what topic, and they know that they have that much time to prepare. And so you can meet it out throughout the whole year. And then finally, simultaneous. Now, if you're looking to grade or assess it, this one's pretty difficult because you can't watch everybody do everything at the same time. But this does allow students to get up, get talking, get engaged with each other, and start building confidence around each other, especially if you are going to have a stand and deliver presentation later. And this just means divide the class up, right? Have an activity where they're all presenting to each other simultaneously. One way that you could do it is divide the class into 4 groups, have an assignment, and each person in that group has a question that they have to respond to. They're the same questions in each group. And during the activity time, all 4 groups are presenting within their group at the same time. They can certainly report back to the whole class what they learned. I love to use the snowball effect in my class with discussion, but you can also use it with presentation. Okay, so those are some whys and whens to think about as far as public speaking or oral communication in the classroom. The big question that generally comes up, almost everyone asks this: what do I do about public speaking anxiety in my classroom? I don't feel equipped to handle this, right? So many people are scared, and they are. Chapman University does a survey on the greatest American fears every single year, and surprise, surprise, public speaking makes the list every single year for one of the greatest fears. Statistic Brain, not the greatest site, but it is a good statistic in the sense that people are reporting to them, right, that 75% of them feel like they have a fear of public speaking. So this isn't a scientific who has it, right? A psychological or medical, but it is a perception, which is great because you're seeing that even if they don't have a dread medically or psychologically, they have a perception that they have that dread, right? Up to 75% of them. So we really do have to recognize that this is a perception or a reality for a lot of people and figure out how we can help people through that. There are 4 stages of anxiety that happen with public speaking, and the first is pre-preparation. This is the second that you say in your class, probably the day you're going over your syllabus, you're going to have a public speaking exercise. And people go, ah, right? So 2% of people actually have a phobia, right? Or a really high level of speaking anxiety. Those people might drop your class. Seriously, they might. They may go and find another class that doesn't have a speaking engagement. Hopefully not, but these are people who, you know, are outside the normal bounds, right, with their anxiety for it. Most people will go, ah, right, but stay in your class and be okay with it. But it is going to help them if you can help them get past it and become a better speaker. So assure them the second you give that assignment, assure them, hey, this is going to be great. I'm going to give you lots of support, right? There's a good reason for it. And then motivate them by letting them know that this is a skill that employers want, right? This is a skill that can help you throughout your college career, right? Just motivate them, get them excited, thinking about it. It's going to be good for them. The second stage at which anxiety kicks in is the preparation stage. And this is when the work actually starts, and some people go, uh-oh, I gotta actually come up with a topic. I actually have to come up with information. And there are two ways that I see my students express this anxiety, and one is to procrastinate, right? Every time they think about it, they get nervous, so they put it off. And the other is to dive in with a lot of energy, but get so lost. There's so much noise in their head, they can't organize, they can't think through what they need to do. So I think the best thing that we can do for them is give them very clear instructions, right? And break down the assignment into tasks and then check in to make sure that they're making progress and they're not putting it out. And if they're having lots of noise in their head and trouble getting to the assignment, you can help them in small little incremental ways throughout. The next stage of speech anxiety, public speaking anxiety, comes at pre-performance. Now their script is all finished, right? And they realize they're actually going to have to get up and share this. A lot of them actually enjoy writing the speech. It's just the idea of getting up and sharing that speech in public that frightens them. And we know that the best way to help people build their confidence that they can do this and do this well is rehearsal. So I definitely suggest that you build in some rehearsal time for them. A lot of people won't do it on their own. But if you say, hey, today is about rehearsal, I expect to see it, this is how we're going to rehearse, this is how you're going to support each other through this rehearsal process, that's great. I actually wait for the peer review in the next stage, but I do have students peer coach at this point. So they're not turning in a review to me. There's no weight on this. They're just coaching each other to do the best job possible. And they're coaching each other based on the rubric, the assessment rubric, so that they've become very familiar with it. They know they've thought it through. They've had some practice with it. The next stage where anxiety kicks in is the actual performance. When they actually stand up to deliver the presentation and the adrenaline hits, and they can't breathe and they're shaking and turning red. And the best thing we could do here is, number one, usher them through these first three phases so they've built their confidence. Number two, give them some prep for this. Let them know that yes, it is very likely that they're going to have an adrenaline rush when they stand up, that they are going to need to get rest the night before, be hydrated, have some food in their body, that they need to breathe and stand confidently and connect with the audience, right? Give them some tips to help them manage that anxiety and assure them if they could just stand confidently and connect with the audience in about 2 minutes, that's going to subside, right? And they'll get past it and they can start enjoying themselves. But if they know to expect it and they know how to deal with it, it's not as scary when it hits. It's more like oh, there's that thing that we talked about. Okay, hello, I can get through this. Okay? So give them some stress management techniques and really encourage dynamic exchange between the speaker and the audience. So your next question might be, how do I promote a dynamic exchange? If you're like me, you get a lot of students who want to do this. Hide behind the monitor, behind the podium, read straight from their pages. And part of that is a lack of self-confidence or fear or nervousness, not knowing how to handle the anxiety. So those other 3 steps can help you with that. And part of it is just not really knowing what the expectation is. So if you make it very clear, I expect you to engage this audience and really have a real exchange of ideas, then that helps because they know that's an expectation. They'll want to live up to that expectation most of the time. So there are 3 things to consider when we're talking about dynamic exchange: the audience, the speaker, and the message. So for the speaker, it's really important that they stay oriented toward the audience, not hiding behind anything, right? If at all possible, limited notes so they can maintain eye contact with the audience. And I ask them to quadrant the room and work their way. Find one person in each quadrant of the room that they feel like they can make sincere eye contact with. And then that way they include the entire room throughout the presentation, and as they get more comfortable, they can actually start branching out within each quadrant. But it gives them a way and a method to make eye contact with the room. And they should not just be making eye contact, but they should be seeking a response from their audience. If when they're writing it, and then when they're rehearsing it, and when they're thinking about performing it, they're thinking, oh man, I really want the audience to have their jaw drop when I share this statistic. So I'm going to share this statistic in a jaw-dropping way, right? Or I really want people to go, yeah, you're right, right? When they start thinking about presentation in relation to how they want to affect the audience, then they're practicing connection instead of recitation, right? Or reading. Also, in those rehearsals, make sure they're standing up, stand and deliver, right? Or whatever situation you're going to put them in, have them rehearse for that situation. And they should actually respond to the feedback they're getting, right? Yeah. And I prepare them. I prepare the ones that are really anxious, who have a higher anxiety level. I prepare them for the moment of that person who's going to be doing this, because you know someone is, right? I prepare them for that. I say, look, if you are standing up there and you have a good message for your audience, you've thought it through, you've considered them, you are reaching out to them and they're doing this, this is not about you as a presenter. This is about them being a bad listener. This is not about you. And so I prepare them for that moment. And I have them visualize themselves handling that very, very smoothly, like, okay, we'll get you later, we'll get back to you, we'll reel you in after a while, right? So just try to help them with that. And then finally have them read those 2 pages, right? That talk about how to plan, organize, polish, practice, and present a presentation, okay? Because that'll walk them through the steps. As far as the audience goes, they have an enormous responsibility. If communication is sharing, and sharing is connection, connection is not a one-way street, right? We need feedback. So I coach my students to listen often, O-F-T-E-N. They have to be oriented toward the speaker so they can see all the nonverbals and hear all of the verbals and show that they are engaged. I have them focus on understanding, not picking people apart, not looking for faults, right? Not building arguments in their head about something that they said, but truly trying to understand the speaker from their point of view. I have them take notes. Maybe not all of them are taking notes, but at least 1 or 2 are doing a peer review. They're doing a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities taken, opportunities missed, and any threats where they did not address the rubric. And they're writing down notes to create a SWOT analysis based on the rubric, performance rubric. That's turned into me. I don't share that usually. They got peer coaching earlier, so the review is for me. It's a listening assessment. And I tell them that. It has to have enough concrete information that I know what you heard, what you received. So I have at least a couple of them taking notes, handwritten notes, not on a computer. And then I ask them, look, I don't want you to have fake feedback like, oh yeah, I agree with you. But sincerely be open enough to let your emotions show, right? To laugh if you feel like laughing. And it's clear that that's what the person wanted. And then finally, I allow no distractions. I tell people to put away their computers, put away their phones, put away anything, right? So they can put their full attention on the speaker. And then finally, there is the message. And the message needs to matter to the speaker. It's very hard for someone to get up here and do their best job if they don't care about what they're talking about. So providing options for students becomes really important. They need to bring themselves. They need to bring their interest and their passion to what they're sharing. Second, the message needs to matter to the audience. So how do I make what I'm interested in and my passions relate to the audience? Where is that connection? Is it through need? Is it through interest? Is it through values? How do I understand my audience's emotions in relation to my audience? I mean, in relation to my message, right? How do I understand this? So this, of course, builds empathy and connection. And then finally, it should be appropriate and stylistically engaging for that particular situation. So sometimes we just want the information, right? We want clear, accurate information, clear, accurate language. Other times, let's say we have an advocacy speech where we want them to advocate for a point of view or call people to action. And we say, look, where are those poetic devices, right? Where's the active language that really inspires us? Where are the vivid descriptions? So engaging all of that through language and through nonverbals. And the next question that is frequently asked are, what are some options? Does it have to be stand and deliver, right? Since so many people are terrified of that, are there other options? And yes, there are. There are a lot more options than this, but if you want to have one assignment or you want to track assignments, right, and let them grow on each other, these are some ideas for you. First, I think we all enjoy discussion, but part of speaking anxiety or communication anxiety is meeting anxiety. So when you call out during a lecture to the class and say, well, what do you think about this? Or so-and-so, do you have any idea about, right, question number 3 there in front of you? And some people are terrified of having to speak in a meeting situation publicly. And so a lot of times you'll ask that question and what you'll hear is cricket, 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 just nothing, silence. Or you get those 2 people who love it, right? And then they're just monopolizing the whole classroom. So when I get cricket, cricket, or I get a monopoly, I say, okay, no problem, you don't have to answer me. Turn to the person next to you. So turn to the person next to you and share 2 methods or 2 ways that you've incorporated discussion into your classroom or that you've experienced as a student. Go. Person next to you. Talk away.
I didn't at the end of the semester do any presentation. What they did, their resume cover letter, like what they picked. Just like they interviewed for their informational interview, whatever they did, just a brief little couple minute overview. And just go to the front of the pocket. I had one girl who she did not want to do it. She emailed me, she asked me to do it. Alternative, like if she could just present to me in my office or anything in my office, I was like, just for expressing class.
So I wait until the energy starts to wane a little bit. Y'all have a lot to say. I love it. But I want you to consider this. Now you have been around each other pretty much since noon, right? So you've gotten a chance to meet each other. But if you had been in this classroom in the first month of class, right, and you haven't really gotten to know the people who are sitting around you or near you, and I do this a lot in the first month of class, and I have people turn to the people in back of them, turn to the people beside them, right? I have them do it in 2s and 3s and then 4s, because this builds a trust. This builds a trust among people in the classroom where they feel comfortable enough to then maybe raise their hand later, to stand up and speak. It has to start somewhere, and sometimes it has to start very small. And you just have to take it off of each class. But that's how I start discussion in my class, and then I move to other discussion models, such as snowball or round table. I have lots of different discussion models in the UM box that I'll show you later, right? Links to 10 discussion models that you can consider for your class. And once you get them talking, then very quickly turn around a week later, give them a more formal format maybe, or a month later, and then have them grow that. Then you can have discussion be a launch pad for panels or group presentations or stand and deliver speeches. I love the panels at the very beginning of the year after I get them talking to each other, and then maybe they start responding to me during lecture in class. I will give a panel exercise very quickly. I like panels for a lot of reasons. Number one, individual accountability, and number two, it takes the pressure off of a lot of students to not be up here by themselves. So I have a panel exercise in the UM box, but basically I will take a class and I'll say, look, we're going to go over chapter 3, and I'm going to have 3 panels. Panel 1, you're going to deal with the first part of chapter 3. Panel 2, the second part of chapter 3. Panel 3, the third part of chapter 3. Now, each person on each panel gets a separate prompt or question, and they can speak no longer than 3 minutes. I put a table up here. They sit behind it, but they have to have posture and eye contact and limited notes. They have to take ownership of that information. They can't read from the book or read notes from the book, right? They have to own that information. And then we open up the floor to questions afterwards. So they really have to be able to listen and respond. And they love it. They really love it. Mm-hmm.
Do you tell them this like ahead of time, that we're going to be doing panels on Monday or whatever?
Yes, there are 2 ways to go about that. In my class, because I teach speech, it's an impromptu exercise. So they know they're on a panel. They know that the information for their prompt will be from a certain portion of a certain chapter. And then they get their prompt when they show up to class, and they have 5 minutes to prepare a response to that prompt. And then they take their places at the table and we start. But it works just as well if you say, here's your prompt, next Monday, we're going to have this panel discussion. It works a lot of different ways. So long as they know what's coming down the pike, right? I set them up for the impromptu starting day 1. Then I repeat it till we get there, right? I do it pretty early on. But so long as they know it's coming down the pike, it gives them time to wrangle whatever issues they have with that. Clear instruction. So I do it rotating and I open it up to Q&A. Sometimes I'll go from panels to a group presentation. I love group presentations because I can put some problem solving in there, which creates group communication, right? They have to coordinate an effort and really try to figure out something together, including staging, how they're gonna stand up here together and share. So I also have a group presentation, a really easy one in the UM box. But another reason why I like this, not only for the problem solving, is they're not alone up here, right? So somewhere early on, if they could be up here with other people, sometimes that really helps them build the confidence to just stand up here. And so that can lead to a short solo stand and deliver, or you can go straight from discussion to a short solo stand and deliver. My first presentation in my class is solo stand and deliver. It's a speech of self-introduction. And they have to speak for 2 minutes. They have to share a story about themselves that allows us as an audience to start trusting them. Because we have to build trust in the classroom in order to take a risk and share. So they have to share a story that we go, wow, you took this assignment seriously, and wow, you took a risk by sharing that. But I don't let them share anything too personal or too traumatic, right? Because you put too personal and too traumatic with adrenaline, and sometimes people can have a breakdown on you, right? So it's got to be a story that they're okay with sharing. Okay. And that might lead to a 5 to 7 minute informative or persuasive presentation. So, and you have some assignments in the UM box for that as well. So you can track a series of oral communication exercises to help you build that community in the class that I'm talking about, or you could just choose one of them. They all help students express themselves. So how do we assess this? Well, there are tons of different ways you could assess it. The way speech teachers assess speeches may be different than how you want to assess it for your purposes in your class. But we do suggest that you assess the whole packet, and for us, the whole package gets equal distribution of weight. It's all important. Nothing's more important than anything else. Style and substance are both important. So we start with physical. How poised are they? Are they able to stand up here, poised, alert, make eye contact with the audience, or stay oriented toward the audience, include them? Are they connecting sincerely? Are they expressive? Are they right, deadpan? Encourage them to be themselves, to bring themselves. Encourage them to find their own style. Vocalics go toward rate and volume and sincere tone, all of these types of things. They need to speak at a slower rate than normal, and they need to speak much more loudly than normal in order to reach the back of the room. Also, are they expressive or monotone? I never tell someone they're monotone. I always say, look, I think you can emphasize your message more if you really put some feeling into some of these verbs, right? Right? Accentuate. Try to put it in a positive way, because I don't want people to go away going, I'm monotone. I want them to go away going, oh, I could be more expressive. Yeah, I'm doing all right, but I could be more expressive. Verbally, this is different than vocalics. A lot of people get them mixed up. Vocal has nothing to do with words, just how you sound. And then verbal has to do with language and fluency and articulation. So how are they pronouncing their words clearly? Can we hear them? The words in the back of the room, not the sound, but the shape of the words in the back of the room. Can they articulate their thoughts fluently without too many filler words and without too many ums and likes and you knows? And are they using language accurately and appropriately and expressively? And are they organized? Can you flow the information? Do they have a beginning, middle, and end, an introduction, a body, and a conclusion? Do they use transitions so that you can follow their train of thought? Do they meet the time limit? Did it seem like they prepared this for the time limit that you gave them? Or are they just rambling? Hold them accountable to staying on purpose and topic. And then finally we have content, which is up to you and your assignment, right? What is it that you're wanting out of this assignment? What's the purpose for this content? But on top of your own personal ideas, consider, is it audience oriented? Is it just about them, or is there some sort of connection that's happening there? Do they think about what their audience's needs are? Are they academically honest? Are they using a variety of sources and support types? Especially support types. Have them tell a story. Have them share some data. Give an example, right? Help them mix it up. So if we think about all these frequently asked questions and we look at the bottom line, basically I'm saying that in order to teach speaking and oral communication, have those assignments in the classroom, in a non-speech classroom, it's going to take some thought because the assignment should be purposeful to help the student connect to a deeper purpose and to help you connect to a deeper purpose and not waste your time in the classroom. You're going to have to factor in not only the time it takes for them to present, but the time it takes you to orient them to that assignment and then support them through the process. Flexible options as far as how they present it and how long they present it and what the topics are become really important so that people can be as successful as possible. And taking time to check in with students, really making sure they're clear, making sure that they're making progress so they don't wall themselves up to the back wall and have no chance of really being able to be successful. And this is probably the most important because whatever they're left with at the end of their presentation, your feedback, their feeling, however they've processed that, that becomes what they take into the pre-preparation process the next time. Whether they're going to be anxious, more anxious or less anxious. And then finally, assessment, making sure that you understand how you want to assess it, why you want to assess it, and that they understand what they're being assessed on. Of course, you know this because you're great teachers. So those are the things that I would think about. And I would finally leave you with that image from the beginning of this presentation, which is the confident speaker, look like this, and the stressed out speaker. Because I don't think this is an either or. There are some either ors. There are some extremely confident students that will come into our class. There are some extremely stressed out students that will come into our class, but they're the outliers. Most of us have both of those images within us. They're both residing in us. So how do we fan the flames of that confident speaker? How do we help people on the way to a journey to be good oral communicators so that they can get that job that those NACE people want them, they want those oral communication skills. So that's that for the presentation. Let's look at box. Now I told you, ooh, that's pretty loud. I told you that there would be a lot of information in the box for you. And Patrick, you're going to provide a link to this box, right?
True.
Awesome. And I saw a lot of you taking pictures of slides. It's fine. I have the slides in there. It doesn't have speaker's notes or anything, but it just has the slides. And you also will have all these fabulous resources. Of course, I need to learn how to type and bring this up earlier.
We've lost our visual.
Yeah, I put it on mute because I'm signing in. Sorry about that.
Edit me out.
Huh? Why won't this work? Sorry, guys. I should have brought this up ahead of time. Hey, yay. There it is. Awesome. Okay. So you'll get a link to this folder that says Public Speaking in the Non-Speaking Classroom. And as you can see, it's got several folders. I'm not going to open up all of this stuff. You can go and peruse through it and decide what interests you. But as you can see here, we've got measurements for self-reporting, apprehension, and willingness, including willingness to listen. Don't you love that one? Love that. I don't even take up their willingness to listen. I just want them to know whether they're willing to listen or not. But in here, we have a link to public speaking anxiety, self-reporting measure, and also a communication apprehension reporting measure. And that, I use that. I have them send me their scores on that, because that tells me whether or not they're apprehensive about interpersonal communication, small group communication, meetings, like when we have one-on-one sessions, and public speaking. So I can sort of adapt my expectations and my responses and feedback and nurturing based on that. You have several assignments in here with the rubrics that we use that you can adapt or use for inspiration. We have those links to discussion formats. There are 10 of them in there. Evaluation rubrics, outline templates. This will be for the students that you can hand out to students when they go to prepare outlines or speeches for you. Tips that are written out in full from the University of Pittsburgh that very closely resemble a lot of what we talked about today. I thought that it would be good, and then of course the slides from the presentation, which are from today. So, and if we can help you in any other way, just let us know, and we will be happy to do so. So, do you have any other questions? Anything? Yes?
Have you ever had a student that just, the fear and the nervousness and everything is just very overwhelming, and maybe your approach to that in the classroom where you were worried about them?
Well, I've had students who, right in the middle of a presentation, leave their purse, leave their computers, leave all their belongings. They freak out and they're out of there. I've had that happen. I had a person last summer who had signed up for speech. It was required by her major. She had signed up for speech 5 times, dropped it 5 times. I mean, had signed up for everything, every instructor. She just got in there, she was panicked, right? Every time thinking about it. So she signed up for my August session last summer, and I said, and we had to get her special permission. They weren't going to let her take it again. We had to get her special permission. She'd already walked, but she had to have this class. I said, we're going to get you through this. She was marvelous. She was marvelous. I can honestly tell you, she still doesn't want to public speak, but she knows that she can manage it if she has to. And she did a great job. I used the self-reporting, that self-report. I also use office sessions to get to know the students. And when somebody tells me they're highly nervous, I try to look a little bit more deeply into that. Is this the average nervousness, right? Or is this over-the-top nervousness? With over-the-top nervousness, for me, I'm not a psychologist, right? I'm just going to support that person through this event. That's it. I'm going to support them through the event. They need flooding, right? They just need exposure time and time and time again without negative results. And so that's going to be my approach. It doesn't mean that I don't assess them for the rubric criteria, but I'm not there to try to make them be ready for a business presentation tomorrow, right? Yeah. For others, I'm trying to catch them up or prod them forward. right? Some people have not had any public speaking experience, any. So they have a lot of catch up to do for the people who went to high schools where they constantly had to stand up and give some sort of presentation. So I try to get to know them. I give them very clear instructions on what I'm expecting. And I try to get to know the class and the individuals so I can choose the right approach. So for some classes that have a lot of juniors and seniors and very low, I may skip some of the repetitive warm-up practices, right, that are there to build confidence and get rid of fear. If they didn't have it to begin with, I can just go straight for it, right? Start getting them on. But if I were in a non-speaking classroom, I would just assume that most everyone could do this assignment. And that if somebody comes to you and is highly apprehensive, just realize that that is probably true. And that the best thing you can do is just support them and help them have as positive an experience as possible. Stay to the rubric, right? And just be objective, and then say very positive things to help them get past that. Because at that point, that's really the best, that is the most positive thing we can do for them. It doesn't mean that they get a free ride on the grade, though. Yeah? And if somebody leaves the class, like that one person I did, that I told you about. Oh, I have another story too. That one person I told you about who left the class, I checked in with her. I had some students go and support her and checked in with her, right? I had a debrief with her about what happened and why. And we created a plan for how she could how she could move forward without letting that overly affect the rest of the semester. And I also gave her a second chance to do the presentation. I let her redo that presentation. So, I met a person very recently who works in a medical field, who said they started their major and realized that they were going to have to take a speech class in order to get their degree. That person went and found a school that had the same degree she wanted that did not require speech. That person is very successful, still has a lot of speech anxiety, right? And talks about how important she thinks it is for students to be held accountable. But that just goes to show you, to build that skill and to be held accountable for that. But it just shows you how big a fear it is for some people. They really may drop your class. They really may go find another school, but that shouldn't be the deciding factor of whether or not you should include it, right? And you can always have, since yours isn't a speech class, you can always have alternate assignments. If somebody really, really has a situation, right, when they really just don't feel like they could do it, hold them accountable, really make them earn that alternate assignment. Does that make sense? For example, can the person do an oral communication presentation that's recorded with a slideshow? And then can they show that to the class? Right? Since you're not teaching public speaking, the outcome doesn't necessarily have to be that you got up in front of, in the public and did it and communicated in public. If it's an oral communication exercise and the outcome is X, Y, or Z, so long as they can meet X, Y, or Z in another format, you can allow that. Getting them to communicate and getting them to share, just getting them to start is something, right? But I really think we do them a favor by holding them accountable. Yeah.
The assignment where you do with the chapter and the panel, Are they at that, so there's like 3 or 4 on the panel, is that panel standing like at the front of the classroom, standing?
I have them sit for the panel. I have them sit.
Okay.
Owning all of this is a lot for a lot of people. It's hard enough just to communicate a thought. It's just hard enough to communicate a thought with limited notes and connecting with an audience, and they just don't need to own all of this straight out, right? So for those early on in my class, I sometimes include a panel so just they can just get that idea of connection without having to worry about how they're standing. Very good question. I'm sorry I left that. Anything else? How do you think, do you have ideas? Did you come in with ideas of how you wanted to incorporate public speaking or communication, oral communication in your class? You did? You came in with ideas?
Oh, yeah.
You've done it before? Mm-hmm. And it's worked out for you?
Oh yeah, it worked out really, really well. What I did in my class was, I taught University 101 at South Carolina last year. And what I did was I kind of started from small to bigger. So that way they can kind of dip their feet in without something crazy. So like the first week and a half, I made them do lifeline presentations where literally from 3 to 5 minutes, they just talk about like where they went to high school, their bio, basically about themselves. 3 to 5 minutes, they can cover a lot in something small. And then towards the end of the semester, I make them do these very larger group projects, which they can present up to about 10 to 12 minutes and then about 5 minutes for questions.
Mm-hmm.
So that way they're more in depth with doing something. And then also speaking with other people as well. So that way it kind of helps them progress. So.
Right, and one of the things that I do that's been fun for a lot of classes, again, I take this off of the class. A lot of the time I have a grab bag of things that I can do, right, that meet the same goal or meet the same outcome. And so I have a big grab bag, and sometimes I go, I think this will work better for this class, so I'll do that. But a lot of times, I call it dating, right, the dating round. So they have to run over to somebody and try to find something in common really quickly. And so they're going through these lists and they're trying to find something they have in common. And the second they have something in common, someone goes ding, and everybody has to go to somebody else and try to find something in common. The goal is to find that person who could get to everyone in the class and find something in common. So if I have a very reticent class or a very young class, I oftentimes will use that one because it gets the energy high and it gets them connected and they don't have time to think about it. They really don't have time to think about it. They just have to connect with people. There are lots of different ways to have fun with it, right, if you're going to build it. Absolutely, absolutely. Anybody else have any questions about what they're planning or what they've been thinking about doing? Okay. Well, I hope you got something out of this, and I appreciate you coming. And my email is kmhooper, H-O-O-P-E-R, @olemiss.edu. You can also email Joanne Edwards, which is jedwards@olemiss.edu, if you have any questions about anything that's in the box. Or you just want to meet with us or run some ideas by us or clarify anything that's been said here today. Okay? Thank you so much.